My name is Amina Moniz. My birth name is Anna. I chose Amina as my Muslim name. I'm from Madeira, an island that belongs to Portugal. So I moved to England, Bournemouth, until I was about 2 with my parents, my mum and my dad. And then my parents split up, so I was sent with my grandparents to Madeira. So from the age of 6 to about the age of 9, I stayed there. And it's a very cultural island. We have various events in Easter, in Christmas, events to do with the Lady of the Rosary, Lady Fatima. So it's a very religious island, if you say. Something that I learnt throughout my childhood years was prayers, hymns, and that's something that my family has tried to keep with me during the time that I was there, especially my grandma. So I'd probably go to church with her 2 times a week, including the Sundays. Split of my parents, I don't necessarily know if it had an effect on my life, but it was quite difficult for me. I remember being still with my mum and my dad, and each one of them coming up to me like in different times and asking, oh, if you had to choose one of us, who would you choose? And to both of them I said, oh, I'd choose you. So that in my mind I thought that I could get them both back together. But then my mum came back with me to Madeira, so I stayed with her for the rest of the time I was there. So I've always had the support of my mum. My mum's probably been the one that I'm most closest to. And only recently, I think when I was 13 or 14, that's when I saw my dad again. And the difference of not having a dad and having a dad did have an impact, because I've never had like a male figure in my life. But then I've never noticed that I needed it. So I've always had my granddad there. But generally, women are probably the people who I grew up with. I loved going to church. I remember being very young and going with my grandma, and it was probably just me and her, and then all the older ladies, and then we'd all sing, and then if I was really tired, I'd sleep on the chairs that were there. But I generally really enjoyed being the whole sense of religious community, where we talk about Jesus, we talk about God, we talk about the apostles. It was always something that I've had a connection with, and something that I've always tried to keep. So during my later years in life, after my confirmation, I went to a group every Friday. So I'd have the group every Friday after confirmation, and then I'd have the community of the church. So I'd be going to church 3-4 times a week during my teen years. I remember the story of Lady Fatima being Mary, I assume, appearing on a burning bush or in a bush to 3 smaller children, one that actually lived until just recently, so she died, can't remember if it was 10 or 15 years ago, but she kept the story going with her. I remember watching a cartoon of Lady Fatima, and it was something that I'd enjoy watching repeatedly. So Lady Fatima's, in the Catholic perspective, has been someone that I've always liked to be close to. We had numerous statues around our church, around the house, and Lady Fatima was the one that I'd be more closest to. There's a time during the year, so probably October, if I'm not wrong, that you go to church every day during that period of time, and then on the Saturday there's like a procession, a candle procession. So you've got images that you kind of carry, so men or women would carry, and then you've got other ladies praying hymns, and then you'd say the rosary. So the rosary is like our prayer beads, and after an amount of beads you'd sing a hymn, and everyone would have a candle with them, and then after the whole procession you'd go back into the church. I went to 3 different primary schools, and then when I came to England, I stayed in Stockholm Primary School, and then I moved to Battersea Park, stayed there throughout the whole years, and it was probably during that time that I had more tests towards me, religious wise. So that was most of the time where I was rebelling most. I wouldn't do things with my parents, and I just concentrate on my friends. I wouldn't really concentrate on studying. But after that, I went to a Catholic college. And my mom thought that it'd be a good experience for me, seeing as I went to a Catholic primary school. So she thought that maybe I'd stay stronger in my faith, in a way. And it was probably a year later, after I joined the Catholic college, that had more Muslim friends around me than any other friends. I moved to Madeira in the beginning because my mom and my dad were having a split, so they needed their own time to fix their own things, and obviously I needed support there, so I had my grandparents. When I moved to England because my mom had found a partner, so my stepdad, and we've been with him ever since. But it wasn't something I actually enjoyed in the beginning because I was so used to having my mom to myself and then having to share my mom with this man that I didn't even know that much was quite difficult for me. So that was probably when I started rebelling a bit more. I started to do things that I wouldn't, so I could get more of her attention. And I would try to go out with her a lot, spending more time just me and her, and I would get like a bit jealous if she was spending more time with him, just because I've always had my mom. So to then have somebody not take her away from me, but spend an equal or more amount of time with her was quite difficult. Well, my first ever view of Islam was something different, something interesting, because it was probably in year 5 that we went to a mosque. It was like a trip in our primary school, and I remember having to choose a scarf and then having to put like the scarf around me, and I thought it was quite adorable. I had like a purple scarf, and being at that age, you kind of want to fit in. So going to the mosque for that day was something that I enjoyed, but later on, because of the media and because of my culture, you don't really like to mix with Muslims. You're their friends, but you don't really mix into the culture. You don't really go to see their family. You don't date a Muslim boy, and that's something that I did later on that was quite shocking for my mom. Even though he wasn't practicing, my mom didn't agree with it at all in the beginning. She was completely against it. She'd say things like, you don't know what's going to happen. Those Turkish men, they're all Muslims. They might take you away. They'll take my baby away. It's like small things like that I, in the beginning, never even noticed that she had that view of Muslims. And that's something that I didn't gain, but I started to have my own perspective of Muslims based on the media. So the bombings, the wars, women having to cover their hair up because I thought that's what their husbands wanted them to do, and small things like that. Well, I was going out with a Turk at the time, and we had our own group of friends, and majority of them were Muslim. They weren't practicing Muslim, but they were Muslim. So they'd say things like astaghfirullah and assalamu alaikum to each other, but it wasn't it wasn't the best view of Muslims that I had, because everything that they do would be exactly what I do or what other people would do. So they weren't a religious figure to me. My relationship with this Turkish boy had ended, and I was thinking to myself that I dedicated so much time and so much love to this one person that could have easily come and gone, and he did go. And a friend of mine told me, why don't you concentrate on the one being that was always there for you? And when I thought about what she had said, I thought that God was the only being that was there for me. And my godson actually told me to go on a spiritual journey. So that's when he was like, oh, go find another religion to interest you, or to take your time, or for you to dedicate more of your life to. And that's how it slowly crept up. Because I had so much free time for myself, I would ask a couple of friends, so what do you think about religion? A friend of mine that's an Iraqi, she was at school during Eid, and I thought that was kind of strange because I thought, oh, all the Muslims are gone, why is she here? So I kind of tagged along to her and I said, oh, I'll be your Muslim body for the day, I'll be your Eid body. And so she told me a bit about what happens during Eid, and that's when I kind of started to wanted to know more about Islam. So she gave me books like A Woman's Handbook to Islam and Philosophy of Islam. Small things like that that made me interested in the religion. But I never actually put myself into it until one day I was sitting with a bunch of friends, and I was reading a book, and my friends were like, "Oh, why'd you have the book?" It was The Woman's Handbook to Islam. They were saying, "Why are you holding that? Why are you interested in that religion? That's none of your business. Keep to yourself, keep to your own religion." And a guy in my travel and tourism class took me to the side. His name's Abaka. And he asked me a couple of questions. And at the end, he said, "You know, you're basically a Muslim. Like, you've basically answered everything as a Muslim would answer. So to do with God, the angels, and the prophets, and believing that Jesus isn't the Son of God. He's not God in person. He's just a prophet of God." And he said the Shahada with me. It was after reading all of those books and listening to a couple of online videos about Islam that I was walking on my way home after college one day. And it was quite dark, so I was trying to hurry up. And there's a crossroads towards my house. So as I was getting closer to that crossroad, I was having, in a way, a conversation with God. And I was asking God, is Islam for me? Can a Portuguese girl with so much culture to do with drinking, going out at night, not necessarily exposing yourself, but being okay with wearing anything you want? So maybe wearing a tight dress to church, that was completely fine. And for somebody to let go of that, would that be okay for me? Could I let go of that? And at that exact moment, a car passed by, and it was actually a hijabi, and she had a window down, and I could hear Portuguese music. So that was, in a way, I see it as my sign, because I saw a Portuguese person wearing a hijab, so a woman that I could see myself as in a future time. It was mainly the questions I was asking. So to do with the Trinity, how could Jesus be God and not be God at the same time, so be the Son of God, and then having the Spirit as the third element of the Trinity? And small things like that added up towards me wanting to find something else that was better to me during the time that I was on a spiritual journey. Also, one day when I was at my confirmation group, our responsible, so the person that was with us, that gave us, in a way, the lessons, that read us the Bible and whatnot, he was talking to us about religion, and one of us must have talked about the Prophet Muhammad, and the first thing he said was, "Oh, he's a man of lies, that book is all fake, he was jealous of Jesus." And for somebody that's supposed to be a role model of a religious person, somebody that's not supposed to mock another religion, whether that be Islam, whether that be Hinduism, was giving such a bad example, that made me want to question it even more. Because I'm kind of the person where if you tell me not to, I'll probably go and research myself and see why people are against it. That's mainly why I went into the Islam route, because there were so many bad views of it. I wanted to make sure for myself that it wasn't something that was only on TV, it wasn't something that was only on newspapers, that it was actually something real. And when I went to see it, it was completely different. It was a religion of peace, a religion of love, and that's something that I wanted. Not necessarily because I didn't have it, but because if God gives you a revelation, if God tells you that this is the prophet, you should follow him, you should do what he says, then who are we to deny it? If God put Jesus in the world, then God can easily put Muhammad. So if he did put the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, then who am I to deny someone that God put on this earth? And being a religious person, it would be to go against my views and my values, to not accept what I had seen God put before me. Well, after my Shahada, I felt a bit awkward, because I didn't know what to do or how to act, because I didn't know how to pray. I didn't know much about the history of Islam, but I just knew in myself that Islam was for me. And a lot of people say, oh, you should have so much time to research. You should have planned this out. You should have seen why these people do this, why they believe in this. But I didn't want to deny the feelings I had inside me. So I kind of jumped into it. And by jumping into it, I explored a world that I didn't even know existed. I had started to go to Jummah prayer. And that's something different. I remember bringing a long dress into the prayer room, and the sisters were like, oh, mashallah, like, you look so nice. And I had the hijab on, and slowly I started learning how to pray. I started learning more about the family of the Prophet and who the Khalifa was, and of, like, after the Prophet and whatnot. And it was mainly that. And because it was during the time of Muharram, and the same Iraqi friend of mine, she told me, come to the mosque with me. So I went to the mosque with her that day, and it was the day of Abbas. So I remember going into this hall full of women wearing black and women crying, and there was a woman at the front of the hall singing what I thought, and she was actually reciting a poem. And I didn't understand anything she was saying, but whatever she was saying was bringing something different inside me. It's like the words she was telling me, I didn't understand, but my heart knew what she was saying. So instantly, with her voice and with the words that she was saying, I started to cry. And my friend next to me was asking me, oh, how come you're crying? And I said, I don't know. So then she explained to me what day it was, and the days that will follow up to Ashura. So after she invited me to Ashura, and I went to that. After I went to that day in Muharram, I came back into the college, and I was speaking to other sisters, and I was like, oh, did you guys go to the mosque as well? It was such a nice experience. Could you guys tell me more about this? And my Shia friend was like, oh, they don't do the same thing as I do. Like, you can't really go up to them and ask them all these questions, because they will just tell you it's wrong. And you need to do your own research. You need to find out for yourself. I can't be telling you that this is right, because this is what I believe in, maybe not what you believe in. So I started listening to lectures from Sayyid Amar Akshwani, and it was from his lectures that I started to understand more about the Ahlul Bayt and the battle in Karbala. And a CD that I watched as well was When the Skies Were Blood. I watched that video on the day my mom found my abaya in my room, and it was quite hard for me, because when she found it, she was shocked. I was walking through the door and she had my abaya hanged up, and she said, if you want to follow this, then take everything you have on, off, put this on and leave the house. And I wasn't prepared to do anything, because I barely knew anything about the religion itself. So I told her, oh, like, it's not even mine, like what you're saying, kind of thing. But it was later on that I sat down with her and I told her, oh, this is something I'm interested in, and there's certain things I can't do anymore, and I'd like you to respect that. So for her, it was a big shock, being such a strong Catholic, maybe not practicing as much, but in the belief of Catholicism, she was quite strong. I started to wear the hijab the day after I said my shahada. Not necessarily because I thought I needed to, but because I thought, oh, I'm a Muslim now, it's part of my identity, this is what I have to do. But obviously later on I found out the meaning of wearing hijab and the purposes of wearing it and what benefits I get. But it was hardest for me having to put it on and take it off, because obviously if my mom didn't accept it, I'm not going to go home wearing the hijab, and as she opens the door she's like, oh, what is this? So I had 2 buses that I had to take to college every day, a number 2 and a 52. So the number 2 was the bus I'd get on with my mom, and then I'd get off and get on the 52. I'd sit at the back of the bus, put my hijab on, go to college, come back home in the 52, take the hijab off, go on the 2 and go home. And for about 4 to 5 months, that was how I would wear the hijab. I would hide it constantly from my mom, because my mom didn't accept it. In the beginning, I thought that I needed to wear the hijab because I thought that was the identity of a Muslim, that she needed to wear the hijab. But obviously later on, looking into it, I saw that it was a way of a woman being more modest with herself, that she shouldn't show her beauty to every person that put their eyes on her. And it was by learning the true meaning of hijab that I knew how important it was. But obviously, I didn't constantly have it on, because whenever I went out with my mom, I'd have to take it off. But having to put it on, I felt happier with myself. I didn't, like, normally if I had my hair out or if I was wearing normal clothes, like, I'd constantly have people looking at me. And then with the hijab on, I noticed that, especially from the men's side, that there weren't so many people staring at me. And I appreciated that because it was a way of respect that I saw from the guys. And that's something that I wanted to continue with. Like, I appreciated that they wouldn't put their eyes on me as they would put on any other girl. During the time she did find my abaya, I sat down with her and we were having some kind of, I don't know what you call it, but it's like a fish soup that we have in Portugal. And I was telling her that, oh, there's certain things I can't do now, like eat pork or drink alcohol. And she looked at me shocked. She thought I was completely joking. But when she noticed that I was serious, she completely stopped what she was doing and she started to cry in such a way that I've never seen my mom cry before. To the point that her nose started bleeding. She wouldn't even be able to breathe properly. And I was trying to figure out why she was so upset about this. It's not like I had some disease or something, or that I was going away from her. It's just that I had a new choice of faith in a way. And it wouldn't really be a new choice. It would just be a continuation of what I had before. But she didn't like it at all. I was talking to her and I remember her saying, I would rather you be unhappy than wear a hijab and be a Muslim. And during that night, I did tell her that, oh, okay then, I'll let you be happy and I'll be unhappy and I won't wear it. But I didn't. I'd still wear it. I still went against my mom. And that's something that during the time of becoming a Muslim, I knew that it was wrong. The way I came about it was completely wrong. I should have taken more time with my mom, because to just throw it in her face and just be like, okay, here you go, I'm Muslim. Like, I'm not a Christian anymore. I'm not going to go to church with you. I'm not going to eat the same food that you're going to eat. It was very disrespectful towards my mom. And only later on did I understand that. Even when I was talking to my friends' parents, they were like, oh, you need to ask your mom if you can become a Muslim. Even though if she says no, you can still become a Muslim, but you need to talk to her. You need to see if she's okay with this, because at the end, she is your mom. You can't disrespect your mom. And if she tells you to go against Islam, that's a different case. Like, if she tells you, okay, you can't wear hijab, then you can wear hijab because it's something that God told you to do. So you're not going to go against God because of his creation. But in your day-to-day life, you should tell your mom where you go, what you do. If you're going to go to the mosque, I didn't initially mind if she accepted or not, because I just thought I was doing this for myself. I'm not doing this for anybody else. And it was really unfair to her until I sat down with her and a teacher, and my teacher asked me what I wanted from Islam, what I wanted from my mom and for her to accept. And she asked the same thing to my mom. And that's when I realized after that conversation that I do need to take my mom's opinion into consideration, because I am living with her. Like, I can't really be going out of the house and doing what I want to and then coming back home and pretending like nothing happened. But slowly I started to explain to her, oh, this is what I believe in. This is what I have started to do. This is where I go. And I tried to encourage her more to actually read about her own faith. So I said, oh, try to read the Bible more often. Try to go to church more often. In a way of maybe her seeing that by becoming more religious, that it's not such a bad thing, because I'm not keeping her away from her religion. I'm supporting her. And I hoped that she would do the same thing. But obviously a mother having an only child, and that only child going into, accepting something that she thought was completely wrong. She was scared and she didn't want me to get hurt. And her way of trying to protect me was by constantly telling me, oh, you're wrong. This isn't what you should do. This isn't what you should follow. And after hearing so much of that, I didn't want to hear anymore. So it'd be the thing where I'd come home, go to my room, go have dinner, go back to my room, wake up, go to school, come back to my room when I'm at home. So I tried to avoid everything to do with Islam with her until she started to come to me and say, oh, so why do you do this? Why did you go to these places? And now it's become more accepting from both of us. So I've tried to accept that I need to respect her space. So when I'm in the house, if I do need to pray, I'll close my room, pray in my room. But I won't wear the hijab at home. So if we do have visitors, I'll probably have to take it off. But during the time I'm outside of the house, I'm free to wear it as I want. Even in the beginning, when I did wear the hijab, my mum wouldn't even look at me if she saw me in the streets. She'd completely ignore me if I tried to speak to her. But now we can both walk in the street together. She can give me a kiss on the cheek if I'm saying bye to her. So things have gradually gotten better. But she's just asked me, if I ask you something about your religion, it's just so I know. It's not because I want to change. So don't talk to me as if to give me advice or to change my mind. So there's only so much I can say to my mum for my mum to understand. Sayyid Omar Naqshbandi was probably the lecturer I listened to the most. From everything that he did say, he used Sunni and Shia books. So I got to see some of the Sunni views, some of the Shia views. And even in college, I'd have constantly sisters asking me, oh, so why do Shias do this? Why do Shias do that? And it'd make me have to go and research myself. So it wasn't really a matter of having to choose from it, because as soon as I went to that night in Muharram, I didn't want to ever be away from that experience. So it was something that I was, that I kept with. And even there was one time where it was probably during Ashura that I saw so many Shias, obviously, during the whole parade. And how could I take myself away from people that are so kind, people that are so loving as a community? Whenever I'd listen to a Sunni talk about a Shia, they'd always bring out, oh, Shias do this, Shias do that. So much hate towards the Shia sect. To see this person, Imam Hussein, go through so much struggle during that time in the Battle of Karbala, it was something that I felt very close to, because by accepting the Shia faith, so Islam and then Shiaism, you have to accept these people as your own, as part of your family. And to accept these people as your family and to know what they went through was quite difficult for me, because having these role models go through so much and knowing that they're from the family of the Prophet was quite shocking to me, because I was thinking, how come nobody's stopping these people from getting hurt? They're from the family of the Prophet. They're friends and companions of the Prophet. How could this be happening to these people? But then you notice that through this story, that there's so much to gain from it. So, like the story of Abbas, that he didn't even have a drop of water for himself. And he went through so much to actually get the water and to come back empty-handed. Well, not really empty-handed. To not even have his hands with him because they were cut off was such an inspiration to me, because I saw him as such a selfless person, as somebody that did so much for other people. And even not being able to help them, that it was something that I had wanted to take with me. So to learn to be less selfish, to do things for others instead of just concentrating on myself. So Muharram for me isn't just a story. It's not just something that happened in history. It's all lessons to be learnt in our daily lives. So whenever I'm thirsty, I think about the women and the children being thirsty and how much I should be grateful for being able to drink water every day, to have the safety of my home when they had no safety at all. They were constantly worried about being attacked during that time. So the whole story of Muharram has helped me during my life due to the lessons that I learned from it. Well, being a Muslim, there has to come difficulties. You have difficulties from people that aren't Muslim, and then you have difficulties from people that are Muslim. So an example would be trying to fit into a culture that you didn't grow up with. You have to change, not really change, but you have to adapt who you're with and how you act to these people. So there's so much respect that is shown to these people that I never even knew growing up. So growing up with my grandparents, obviously you have to show respect for them, but it was never the amount of respect you show to elders when you're a Muslim. So respecting your family is something that I did learn while being a Muslim. Dedicating more time to God, so praying 5 times a day, has increased my faith, bettered my faith, if you say. Learning that time goes so quickly and that it could end at any moment, so we should spend more time dedicating our life towards God, so going to the mosque more often, remembering God in the way you speak, so alhamdulillah and mashallah and stuff like that. Adding these little things to what I say, what I do before I eat. All of these have changed towards me becoming what I think is a better person. I usually go to the Islamic Center as often as I can. So there's lessons by Sheikh Ahmed Hanif that I go to. Then there's the dua on Thursdays. And adding to that, there's the Ahlul Bayt Revote community that I go to every last Sunday of the month. So that's something that I felt has brought me closer to the religion. And the community itself, they're amazing to me. They're very welcoming. I haven't had one person be rude to me, when if I compare that to going to church, I'd have to constantly worry about, oh, am I dressed appropriately? Or is there anyone here that I need to speak to? So when I go to the mosque, it's more concentrating on going there for God. The community comes later. Like the community, you're there as a whole, but then you don't think, okay, then I'm going to speak to the neighbor, or I'm going to speak to my cousin that I haven't seen in 2 weeks. So obviously my mum found out about me having an interest of Islam and joining Islam once she found the abaya that night. And for her, it was completely shocking. She didn't want to accept it at all. But then once I got the courage to speak to my dad, and knowing that he's so far away from me, so he lives in Jersey, so I have to get a plane if I wanted to go see him. But to see his reaction was very, how would I explain it? I don't even have words to explain it. It was such a great feeling that having somebody that wasn't always there for me, and maybe it's even easier for him to accept it because I wasn't always in his life, but to see how kind he was about it. He just said, as long as you're happy and as long as you're doing something that will better you as a person, then I would always be there for you. Even now, when we speak about Islam, he asks me, oh, so could you send me more songs by Maher Zain? And he plays them in the car, and my little brothers listen to it. So having his support and my stepmom's support was quite overwhelming for me. Not only because I was happy, but I was also very upset that my mom didn't have the same reaction for somebody that was there for me, that I thought would always accept what I wanted to do, and to find it hard and to find it so difficult to accept was quite sad to me. So there'd be times where she wouldn't even look at me when I'd come home. So I'd go to my room and I'd constantly cry because I was wondering, how can my mom find it so hard to accept her own daughter in something that's completely fine, something that I'm not even hurting anyone. But looking at how she was reacting, she wasn't reacting because she didn't love me enough. She wasn't reacting like that because she wanted the worst for me. She was just afraid, and she just wanted to understand how I could leave my culture behind and leave the way she brought me up behind. And that's what was always going through her mind. She was always trying to find excuses, like, oh, maybe it was because of my separation with your dad that you became Muslim, or maybe it was because I wasn't good of and I wasn't the best of a mother for you, so God is punishing me. She'd constantly say, why this is happening to me? What did I do to deserve this? And I was just trying to explain to her that it's not what you did. Like, it has nothing to do with what you taught me or what you haven't taught me. It's about me finding something that would make me a better person. Things so much better, alhamdulillah. Like, I'm able to wear this at home. Well, not really at home, but she's able to see me put this on and leave the house. And she buys halal meat for me now. We're able to sit down and actually have a proper conversation without arguing. Well, 3-4 months ago, there wouldn't be a day that we wouldn't argue. So it would be constantly arguing every day. I'd have to lock myself in my room so that I wouldn't have to speak to her, because I knew that if I did speak to her, it would always lead to us having an argument. And now, if I say, oh, I have to go to the mosque, or oh, I have to go to a revert group, she'll just say, okay then, what time is it? And what time do you have to be home? Then I tell her, and she's like, okay, then have a good time, be safe. From not being able to look at me to now randomly sending me messages saying, oh, hope you have a great day, mommy loves you, have a good day, and take care of yourself. It's like she's a completely different person compared to how she was. But she's the same mom that I grew up with. So it's like now she doesn't accept that I've become a Muslim, but she respects the fact that I've chosen this path in my life. I want to base my future on Islam, everything. I'm actually thinking of going to an Islamic college to do a foundation course in Quranic Arabic, and then a 3-year course doing Islamic studies, so that I can one day, inshallah, open up an Islamic center in Madeira so that I can teach people about Islam. Because in the summer, I went to a library and I found one book about Islam, and it was in English, and it had so many other religions to it. So it was probably just 3 or 4 paragraphs talking about a religion that I followed. So to try and find a book in Portuguese to give to my mom, I couldn't even find that. And to try to bring a bit of knowledge from what I've learned and take it to Madeira is going to be hard, because if I was just wearing a hijab and my family was completely against it, some of them wouldn't even go out with me. To actually opening up an Islamic center is something that I find challenging, but also that I will, inshallah, see as something rewarding, not only for myself, but for the people around me. And I'm actually going to contact a few people in Portugal that have mosques and ask them what they did and what I can learn from what they've learned that I can take with me. Maybe, if I get the right information, I want to open up a charity so that I can gain money so that I can run the place, because obviously you can't really have an Islamic center and not pay rent or not pay for the books that you have there. So it's a long journey that I have planned for my future, but it's something that I just want to base around Islam. So get a proper education, learn about Islam. Then during that time, inshallah, having the charity to get the funds for the center, going back to my country, opening up the center. And then if the Muslim population there grows, then maybe one day build a proper mosque. And something that I want to take with me is to keep the Shia teachings, so Shia hadiths, teaching about their imams and their Ahlul Bayt is something that I think would be interesting for them, seeing as I learned so much respect and love from these people that they could learn as well. I know that there's a Sunni mosque there, and I did try to contact them, but obviously it takes time, seeing as they're in another country, they probably have stuff to do. But I spoke to a lot of Sunni brothers, and they said that it would be hard for me to even consider joining them in trying to build an Islamic center, because I am a woman, and because I am a Shia. So they'll be like, oh, one, you're a woman, so I'm a man, you can't do anything. And then you're a Shia, so you're following something that's completely wrong. Why would we join you to open up an Islamic center? So that's probably the biggest challenge there, because I don't want to create a separation in Madeira. So I don't want to create confusion in what people think. I want to try to unite everyone so that they can have an overall understanding of what Islam is, and then slowly that they can for themselves research about the history and what happened.